Good evening, folks. Patrick here from Eight Questions with Have Cheetah Will View, and welcome to our show. Yeah. Sorry about no show yesterday. There was we had to push back our date back a little bit. Um, so um, so we will be talking to film director and uh, visual effects guru Kevin Van Hook. He will be here on the 13th of December. So we had to push that back till then. So that'll work out well for everybody concerned. That show is going to happen, and but it happened so late that there was nothing I could do to get a show together for yesterday, which is why we were dark. But we are not tonight or this week, as we are welcoming in a pair of powerhouses. First off, tonight we are talking to artist and model Griffin Stone Katz. He'll be here in about 15 minutes. Tremendous artist. And yeah, and you have been seeing that a little bit more on the show. Um, I don't know what it is. I just feel like, I really enjoy talking to artists. Uh, the painters, sculptors, um, mask makers. They're all artistic beyond belief. And in this case, Griffin, I've been admiring his work for quite a while now. And so I really wanted to talk to him. And a very unusual twist. I actually asked his mom if I could actually, if he thought he would actually talk to me. And his mom said yes. So thank you for that. Uh, uh, so that's going to be a tremendously fun show tonight. Um, and uh, and tomorrow, of course, we have the mighty horror miser. Monty G here will be with us. As you know, Monty G is a tremendous asset to our horror community here on the tube. He's one of the co-hosts of the Horror Hangout, along with Jen and Christian, and of course, Sean Patrick Urshan, the master of the Horror Corner, and he'll be our guest tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And that will be our first show in December. We have a really good December planned. We have a lot of fun, a lot of guests are going to be coming on. I can tell you the first week of the month. I will share with that. Oh, I need coffee. Uh, Good morning, Casey. How are you, sir? Welcome to the show. We are talking to Griffin Stone Katz. He is actually here right now, but I want to give him a couple of minutes so I can get a few people in the chat here. So Nora, how you doing, Nora? Um, and I'm glad you're here. Those of you two who can share us out, that'll be awesome. I want to go ahead and um, tell you about the first week of December for the show, and then we will bring our guest here. He is here a little early, so we'll bring him on a little early. But glad you guys are here. But December is going to be a lot of fun, and this is the first week of what we have. We have a really really unique young lady coming to see us next Tuesday on the 6th. It's comedian Sarah Dunn, and when I booked her, I knew she was a stand-up comedian, and I was excited about that. But the more I have gotten to know her, the more I'm really impressed by her. She has overcome mountains, big waves in her life, and she's coming out on the other side. We will be talking to Sarah Dunn next week. Not only is she a fine stand-up comedian, but she is also a survivor. She was trapped in a cult and had to get out, had to fight her way out. And what makes it really unique is that the fact the cult that she was in was started by her own family. So yeah, I'm really impressed with the fact that not only did she escape, but she's actually using the experience to mine some humor out of it, and to help other people. She's also a voiceover coach, a coach. So we'll be talking to her next week. Uh, and then on the 7th of December, we are bringing back for a third time our good friend Mike Ferguson will be back with us. Mike has a lot to catch up on. His 2022 has been off the chain. And 2023 is going to be even bigger for the young man. And he will be here on the 7th, and we will catch up with Mike Ferguson. He's got two big movies coming out soon. One is called The Flood, one is called Breakout. It's going to be a lot of fun for Mike. We'll catch up with him on the 7th of December. And then on the 8th, we have actress model Jolene Anderson will be here. She comes to us, by the way, Australia, and she has done a lot of cool things in her career. Not only is she a top model, but she also has done a lot of fun genre-related movies, including an appearance on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and she did an excellent short film based on the Alien universe called Alien Specimen, which is a top drawer. And she will be here with us to talk about that, and also her new short film called Layla. So that's what's coming up the first week of the show. The first week of the show here in December. I'm going to go ahead and bring our guest out now. We're going to just do a little light talking with you guys, and then hopefully people get here by 8 o'clock, and then we will take this thing for a ride, and it'll be fun. All right, so put your hands together and help me welcome in our guest, Griffin Stone Katz. Good evening, young man. Can you hear me all right? No.
How about now?
There.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
All right, all right.
So happy to be on
Yeah,
the
I saw you
show.
come into the basement. I saw you in the basement. I just wanted to give a couple minutes here to let some people come on in. I always go up about 15 minutes early so people can come on in and say hi and
I
and
figured
then
the same thing, that I should get here a little bit early.
no, that's fine. That's fine. Generally, when guests come a little early, we'll just bring them out there and talk a little bit till about 8 o'clock or so, and then we'll take it for a ride.
Wonderful.
Can you see the chat okay, Griffin?
I don't think so. Also, if you hear anything in the background, is my cats just being crazy? Muse.
That's awesome. We're cats people. I have a cheetah. He'll probably make an appearance later, maybe.
Oh, really? Yeah, I was wondering. There's like a little cat in the top right corner of my screen. Wait, comments, private chat, comments. Oh, yeah. Okay. I think I see it now.
Yeah, this is gonna be a lot of fun. Thank you for coming up and doing the show with us for sure.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm honored to be asked to be a part of it.
I mentioned it. I don't know if you caught that or not, but it was funny. Is that I asked your mom if about the show. I went to her and I said, do you think your son would be interested in talking to me? And do you think think he'll do it? And she goes, yeah, I think he would. You should ask him. So yeah, so I I wanted to ask, but I wasn't sure because I wasn't really sure if you'd be willing to do a show, especially with someone who you didn't know or who you hadn't heard of. And so I was a little bit, I was like a little bit wary about that.
No, yeah, completely understandable. I will say this is my first, podcast I've been on for sure. So, I
You're
mean,
kidding me.
super excited.
You're kidding me, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
no, seriously.
Are there no art? Are there no art centered podcasts out there?
No, there's plenty of them. I follow a couple of them, like Art News Net, and they get in contact with local artists and everything. And then there's like art history ones. But no, I just haven't been asked before. I mean, relatively, I would say I'm at the very beginning of my art career, putting together a portfolio. I've had 2 shows, or I guess 3 now. Hey, come here. Stop being mean to your brother. Stop. Oh, God, just monsters.
How many cats do you have?
I have 2 cats and they're tabbies, and yeah, I got them when they were kittens, and so they've been raised together since they were very young, and they are always fighting for dominance. Do you want to come over here? Ridiculous.
Yeah, the cheetah. He's a soloist. He doesn't get along with anybody other than me. Yeah, but I love the noise.
I know,
And
right?
I heard one of them name is Muse.
Muse and Curiosity, yeah.
Yeah, why those? You couldn't pick up 2 perfect names for cats for an artist.
Yeah, no, that was for sure the mindset behind it. Just something that would always remind me, but also is very oriented with their nature as well. Like Muse, when I first picked him up, he was hanging upside down from his cage. And Curiosity, I mean, he just lives up to his name. He's got these huge eyes and is always just so inquisitive.
That is so cool. It really is. Now, do they hang out with you when you paint, or are the materials you use too dangerous for them to breathe?
Actually, funny story about that. So before I moved into the apartment I'm at now, which is far bigger, it's like, I mean, just the living room was the size of the studio that I had before. But yeah, I mean, they would be nonstop around my paintings. Now I actually have a studio out in my garage, so that's great. Sometimes I'll paint inside. It just depends on whether I'm doing like splatter painting or the materials I'm using. But yeah, there was a time where Curiosity just had, I'm not sure, an addiction. He got a taste for it or whatever of eating my oil paint. And luckily it was non-toxic and everything. But yeah, he was just like obsessed with oil paint for a while. I just see like little green splotches all around his mouth.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah. I was always just wondering about the paint fumes. You have to be careful. You have to make sure you have
Yeah,
proper
seriously.
have you. But yeah, why is it not surprising though? Cats will get into anything. I mean,
Anything.
you put it as long as they can reach it, they're in it.
Oh yeah, no, immediately. I mean, when I was smoking cigarettes for a while, Muse would try to pull him out of the pack just so he could like run around with them in his mouth. And at the time they were kittens, so it kind of looked adorable in like a fucked up way, but it was sweet.
But I think they're probably telling you that, yeah, you probably want to quit that.
Yeah, I mean that was a push for sure. And the oil paints, I just moved everything out to the garage. But sometimes I'll bring my dog out there.
Did it work?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes I get jealous if I'm drawing and stuff, though.
That is awesome. You know what? I don't think I've ever heard of a cat actually helping their owner quit by stealing their cigarettes. There's a story.
I mean, it was cute and kind of funny, but at the same time, I was like, oh no, he's gonna get addicted to nicotine. Like, I can't have this.
No, we can't have this. No. So I'll tell you what. We'll both quit right now, and we'll just stick to painting.
We just exactly, yeah. That was the only outlet I could find that had that same like rush of dopamine.
Right. Now this is a weird question, but do your cats paint themselves? Do because I've seen people with their cats, they'll put paint on they'll put a canvas on the floor, and they'll let their cats walk all over it.
That is a good idea. Yeah, I've yet to do that. Yeah, I mean, I've had paintings that have been like skewed by the cats by them like rubbing up against it or kind of like, yeah, like chomping on them. But no, I haven't done any like paw print paintings.
I don't know how they do that exactly. I don't know if I know they put the canvas on the ground, and then I guess what they do is they dip the cat's feet in the paint, and then they put them on the canvas and let them go at it.
Yeah, just go crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you have like a laser pointer or something, you can kind of paint
Yeah.
them, so to speak.
How old are Curiosity and Muse?
Oh, they're only like a year or two old. They're still pretty
Oh my,
juvenile.
that you have a lifetime of joy ahead of you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're telling me, man.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that'll be crazy. Thank you guys for coming on in. We were talking to artist Griffin Stone Katz, and we're about ready to get this thing going here. Yeah, because you not only are a very good painter, and you must be on the rise. I mean, your work is really extraordinary. How many are you currently showing anything anywhere, any galleries?
So I had some pieces at the Chocolate Art Show, which actually just started up back again since after the pandemic was the last one that I had there. Okay, we're gonna go over here, buddy. Um, and yeah, but no, I need to be showing more. I suppose I've been such a stickler for wanting such a heavy, solid body of work that I can show all at once that will really give a scale to, how serious I am about my artwork, but also like range as well and topics. But
Yeah, that's something I don't think, I don't think, it wasn't until I started talking to a few other artists, that I noticed that too, that a lot of them really work hard to build up like you said, not only a body of work, but quantity of work. You want to be able to have, it's not, if you could draw, maybe you could maybe draw or paint, 5 or 10 paintings, but that it really isn't all that much. Um,
I
uh,
mean,
I mean,
the artists
you want to build up a lot more so you can show a lot more.
show a lot more and show that you have there's no like scarcity in your mind at all. There's a large quantity of work that you're just if given the time, if given the opportunities, you can keep on producing. And for me, I find scale to be very important. I wish that I could have taken some of the huge paintings in here to show you, but I just think it'd be too tight and small. But I have a nice little collection of drawings on the side. But yeah, I mean, the artist that I like the most would be Basquiat, Warhol, this dude, Mr. Doodle, he actually just painted like his whole house inside and out with all these drawings, like every square inch. But Yayoi Kusama, I really love, Jackson Pollock, Picasso, Vincent van Gogh, Francis Bacon, George Condo, and like the list goes on, Tracy Emin. But the point is that what I noticed and then becoming a great artist, or just like a running theme, would be like scale of work and quantity of work, and also a large diversity of subject matter for the most part. But also there can be like thematic elements as well, like Yayoi Kusama or polka dots.
You said fanatic elements. Does that just means impulsive?
No, like thematic, like themes to
I'm sorry, thematic. But do you impulse paint? I mean, do like you're just sitting here, or you're sitting around, you're watching TV, or you're reading a book, or doodling around. Do you ever just suddenly get that fire to suddenly go paint something? You're inspired by it, like
Oh, of course, yeah.
middle of the night type of things. You wake up, middle of the night, and go like, I have an idea, and then you go out there and you start painting it.
Yeah, no, I mean, what? It was last year for my birthday, or was it for Christmas? I got a bunch of like work lights just so I could bring it out in the garage. But no, that's a huge aspect to I find when you can an artwork gets like elevated to something that you didn't really imagine that you were going to take it in that direction. But yeah, I mean, impulse is a huge part of I think my process, along with like I mean, I always like the idea of like controlled chaos.
Yes. I yeah. I've always sensed that. When you watch, I mean, there's some Renaissance painters. You go look at some of their work, and you can definitely tell it was thought out and very meticulous. And then it seems to me like the more modern we got, the more that art has become more impulsive, more on the moment, more not set out there and planned out. More just like I have an idea, and then it's enacted on. I think modern art today seems to be more of that than it is. Okay, I'm going to get somebody to sit in front of me and I'm going to paint them. And it takes hours or days to do it. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's a I don't want to say it's lack of patience because I don't think that's right, but I just don't see artists now, you know, going ahead and spending like 2 or 3 weeks on just one picture, one art, one piece. I think now I think they seem to be more speedy. I mean, is that the right term for it?
Yeah, I mean, like almost production line style work. But I'd say, I mean, I found myself kind of being a little bit greedy at times because I want it all. I want those pieces where it's long, drawn out, arduous, processes of like patience and really thinking it out. But then on another hand, the experience of very quickly and rapidly expressing idea is just as important. Like I think part of wanting to have a huge collective body of works together is to express the fact that I'm not trying to like box myself in of one painting style or one style in general, or
Yeah,
like a
it
way
is.
to approach a subject matter.
Yeah, you don't have just one particular style. You have It seems like your work is has multi levels, and it's definitely designed. I mean, you definitely, isn't just like impulsive. It's set. This is your A B C D E. Which painting you're going to do on which level you're going to do it. Even if it is middle of the night, you get up, you can sit there and say, yeah, this is how I'm going to paint this picture, and you've already painted pictures like that in the past. It's not totally frenetic and it's not totally spontaneity. Um, because I think spontaneity, I mean, is that a really a gift of is that a gift that an artist really wants to have? Where you just get out there and just like you just go ahead and paint just for the sake of painting. I think that when you sit there and you do create art, even when you do wake up and you sit there, I have a painting. It's something you've already thought about, it's something that's inside your head. It's not just like, what am I going to paint today, and just start just moving your hand. You do have a plan, and the good artists always do, don't they?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that there is a mix though of there's times where it is, just kinetic energy, a lot of movement. It is spontaneous. You don't really have anything in your brain. I think that you're completely right within the assessment of, yeah, you have something in mind, something that you're visualizing that then you're putting to canvas. But there's also a great value and joy to seeing what shapes you can pull out of the lines or how the colors are starting to work. I would say as layered as like my paintings and drawings can be, there are so many moments in it where I don't really know what's going to happen next or exactly the full image that I'm producing. It's just as it's coming along, there will be a mix of spontaneity and then careful decision. And a lot of that I find I'm thinking of the colors, a little bit of like feeling out like the geometric, I always try to have an image kind of be very balanced or I mean, at times, like, you want the viewer to be drawn to a certain area, but there is like, I wouldn't say there isn't a little bit of spontaneity in just about every image that is made. Because at times there is like a very well-defined idea, or in some of the paintings there can be like these fractal nets that I put over them, and that's something that it is kind of like a concept that I want to flesh out and something that I know can work very well for introducing a lot of different materials in a very interesting way, where like if you start with acrylic and then you move that up to oil pastel and then you move that up to oil paint, you have a different thickness in each of the materials that you're using. So there is like a literal depth to it, like a sculpture aspect. But, hello.
The work will always will the work look different with every different material you use.
Yeah,
even if you're drawing the same picture, it's still going to come out looking different because the materials you use, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, like if you take this one right here, it's a mix of just like graphite, like pencil and everything, and then you have some just markers and such. You have a little bit. I don't think that there's any just straight ink on this at all. But I mean, you take that and then you take something like this, and the image just comes across a lot differently. Either with things that are being kind of brought out more in it, or how the colors are coming together, or just like, the feeling of what pops out at you. Hopefully that's coming through well in the camera.
That's coming out. Yeah, I can see that. Now that one there, it seems to be a little bit. It seems to be muted compared to the first one. How do you get that? How do you get that contrast?
It all comes down to what materials I'm using. Like for instance, like this one and this one were moved roughly using the same markers and everything, and then with the exception of the little Sharpie points right here. But then if you have, and again, like it depends on the quality of the materials and such too, like whether you're using like Sharpie versus like Prismacolor or like very strong alcohol-based markers. But then you have something like this, which is going to look much different, far less muted.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's really beautiful. Now, how long would a piece like that take you?
Like this one, I would say probably that's something I struggle at times to work out a little bit. This one has a lot of like high detail in it and everything. But I would say if I just had nonstop time to just work on something, probably a single day, like a sitting, I can make like a drawing like this.
That takes a lot of energy, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's why I love so much. But then, like I did during the pandemic, I did a series of people in face masks, which I made over the course of a few days, and I made 40 of them. And these were quite quick. I could make a couple in a day just because they were all graphite.
And you were inspired too, right?
Yeah, inspiration was there. And
how important is aspiration to an artist?
That is a good question. I would say that who's the quote by? I'm forgetting the exact person that's quoted from, but I've always, I think, subscribed to the idea where it's like a fisherman can go out to fish and he may not catch anything, but if he doesn't go out to fish, he's not going to catch anything, like no matter what. And that's what I try to hold to artwork as well. Like I may not feel inspired at times while I'm working on something, but no matter what, I have to be in the process of working in order for that inspiration to happen. Sometimes it can happen, just out of the blue. It's like a lightning bolt, or it hit you, or it's something where, it's always kind of coming on and rising up and everything, and peaks and it falls. But I'd say inspiration can be very valuable and important, and it is a concrete piece of, but I don't know, you can find inspiration anywhere. It's like a mindset. At times if you're super depressed or your outlook in life is bleak, you may not feel inspired, or that may inspire you. I feel like inspiration is something that it's kind of always there. It's just whether or not you want to like dive into it.
because I mean, I know I've heard some, like, sometimes it's like you don't paint every single day. I mean, sometimes you just don't feel like painting, or you don't feel like drawing or whatnot, and sometimes you go inside there, you'll sit in front of the canvas and there's nothing there. It's just like, okay, I could either force this and be unhappy with it, or I could sit there and say, what, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to walk away from this, and I'm going to do something else, work out, read, go for a walk or whatever, and then wait for the energy to come to me, and then paint, then create. I think there's some artists that feel like especially the ones that are maybe, like, maybe they're trying to build up that body of work, that have a backlog. You think that, when they feel like they have to create something to create, to have something there. But that's not a good thing to do, is it? I mean, you would never recommend anybody sitting there to create when there's no creativity at the moment. Better to walk away and come back to it.
Yeah. There was this one female artist that I'm blanking on her name, but she would like just sit in a chair, just waiting for like the inspiration to hit her to actually start painting and such. But I think yes, it is good to have other either creative outlets or being around animals, working out, going on a run, whatever you may do. But I find at times that instead of like forcing the process of getting in a creative mindset, it's something where then I start to use a little bit more spontaneity and a little bit more chaos of, just slapping a lot of color down and seeing, kind of where that can take me. And at the times where, I mean, just in general though, if like a day or two goes by and I haven't made like anything at all, in whatever artistic medium, whether it's painting or drawing or sculpting or just creating anything, writing, I start to feel kind of ill. Like I don't feel very
well. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I can just, I've always admired, the artists, because of what it takes to actually create, and to, I'm just sitting there going like, man, I mean, sometimes I'll sit here on my computer and I'm trying to work and I have nothing in the tank. But for an artist, that's what they do. They thrive by creating, by
Exactly.
when they leave the canvas, it's not a good feeling. I'm sure that, when you get up and you feel like, I don't even want to go inside the room today. I'm not feeling it at all. And I'm sure that's got to be a little, it's got to be a little like, man, that's not where I want to be. But when you do go out there, you do take a walk. Do you take like a notepad with you, or maybe it's on your phone when you're out there walking around and you got nothing in the tank? Do you take something with you just to sit there and maybe take pictures of certain things to catch your eye as like a jump start? Like, this is something I can explore. This is something I want to look into deeper. Wow, look at that. I like the way how that's shaped, or I like the way that person, is, I like how, you run across a person doing their life and you sit there and you go like, that's interesting. I think I could get a picture out of that. Do you take a pad and or take notes via your phone about ideas you might come up with?
Yeah, no, I for sure always try to make sure to keep a little notebook on me or sketchbook. Or, I mean, I found it, super valuable to leave him alone. He has done nothing to you, and you just want to be so chaotic. But, I'm
I
amused.
love cats.
I know, seriously, he always starts. He's having fun by himself. But yes, okay, anyways, get back to it. Stop trying to sneak up on him. Like a voice recorder I've always found is very helpful. Taking photos is always great as well. But I mean, for the most part, it's just always like jotting stuff down, just trying to like see people or moments or things around me that will have that substance of like a spark to like come back to.
I love it. No, I seriously, this is epic.
It's so funny.
Who's making the noise? Is it Curiosity?
It's Muse will start chasing Curiosity because Curiosity got a lot larger as he's grown up, and I think that Muse has a little bit of a complex about it. So he always tries to fight him. It's so mean that he'll come over and start like kissing his face and everything, then just start biting him in the neck.
Bonded twins are amazing.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I want to go back a little bit back to the beginning because I didn't do that. We seem to jump in the middle of it, but that's awesome. But I do want to go back to the beginning when you first started. Now this is something we're going to have to touch on just the slightest of the slightest because this is about you and it will be about you. But you do have a pedigree and a talent gene. You know, you're very talented. And you definitely got probably that. You feel like you got that from your mom for sure.
Yeah, my mom is wildly talented. She's always been writing and acting and always pursuing her dreams, and that inspired that of me. And my dad, when he was younger, before he went crazy, which is a lesser way to put it, but I guess a simple way. He was a visual artist, so he was drawing and painting as well.
Okay.
But I would say that there's like a genetic link to it. I mean, I didn't really know my dad at all, but I feel very strongly. I'm like, oh, I got the visual art gene from him, like without a doubt.
Now, how old were you when you fell in love with being an artist? Were you inspired by your dad's works? I mean, did you have any of his works there at the house and you just discovered them and said, this is really pretty, or something that you developed at school or on your own?
I mean, I've always been really into just drawing and sculpting. I was sculpting a lot when I was a kid, but I've always been very visually art oriented. And oh, there he goes. But anyways, so I would say that if you want to know the exact moment where I can tell you exactly where I decided that I was going to be a visual artist, and this was the pursuit I was going to go with. Like there was no questions about it anymore. I was very young and in high school. And this is not to say that anybody should really do this, but this is just my own personal experience. But I was getting into psychedelics and everything, and I really wanted to find out exactly what form of art I should pursue specifically, whether it be like music or writing or visual art, in terms of, what I should put the most time into, what will feel the most rewarding. What do I feel it can encompass like everything, express as much as possible all at once. And I did some acid one night and had a really gnarly like ego death, just like alone in my room. And when I came back into myself, I made like a little recording that was just telling me like, you have to stay committed to artwork, like to painting and drawing and sculpting. Like this is what you are. It's like I can just recall, like, I lost all sense of myself and everything around me. And when I was starting to come down and come back into myself, the first thought that really hit me was me being a kid and playing with Legos and how much I enjoyed the process of
Putting them together,
building and like physically putting something together. And yeah, ever since then, anytime I'd ever done, any other psychedelics, I always came back to visual art. Is like, this is what you have to do. This is what you'll enjoy the most. And as painful as it may be in the process of, becoming an established artist or a professional artist where, that's what I'm getting my income from and what I can just do nonstop.
Now you don't do that now. You don't do that now for inspiration, I hope.
No. I mean, I did enough for a lifetime.
Yeah, obviously you're not the first. Obviously, that has been a familiar for a lot of artists. I think they have, if they're honest, that they've done the same thing. I mean, I know a lot of people are, a lot of even musicians, they're inspired by that too. But that's sort of a that's sort of a risk.
Oh, it was a
Yeah,
risk that
yeah,
I gambled a lot with. And I mean, I got my ass whooped a couple times, but I mean, I feel like I wouldn't change anything at all. Like, I mean, it gave me the clarity that I was looking for in some ways and really mixed up, it made a lot of things like very confusing. But at the end of the day, it's who I'm now. And I feel like I'm a lot better because of it. But
I will say this, just in the very short time we're talking to, I could definitely say this, and this is one of the reasons why I was really inspired to talk to you, to talk to you, Griffin, is you are, a lot of times, you hear about, children of someone who's, relatively well known, they get trapped in the shadow, and they fight to get out of there to find their own identity. That is something I never sensed from you. Never. Just looking at your work, and I said, this young man has always been on his own. He's always he stepped out a long time ago, and I think it's one of the things I really respected about you and your process is that, it never seemed to be any struggle. Not to say that there wasn't. I'm just saying from the outside looking in, I really didn't see you struggling at all to find yourself, so to speak. I've always sensed that you've been your own person. You might have had a little chemical help, but very little. I mean, you would have gotten here regardless, whether no matter what. Do you feel that way too? Do you feel like was it easy? Was it pretty easy for you to find your own identity? Like, yeah, this is me. I'm comfortable in my own skin. Or did you feel like sometimes you were overshadowed and you had to fight your way through it?
I mean, oh, I've always been pretty individualistic. And like starting when I was very young, I always knew I was kind of my own person, so to speak. Not to get too into the weeds with anything, but when I was around like 2 or 3 years old, I developed like a very strong like sexual fetish, and I was so young, and I knew that I was in elementary school and everything, or like preschool. Elementary school when you're 2 or 3 years old. I don't know. Point is that yeah, no. Since I was a kid, I always felt that I'm my own person. Like I I just felt like I didn't even fall underneath somebody else's shadow. Like I was just my own shadow. I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, I agree with that 100%. I do. Uh, talk to enough to know the difference between someone who's out of their shadow and someone who's trapped within it. Yeah, you're definitely your own person. How old were you when you first? What was your first artistic created? Were you was it drawing first, painting, writing? What was the first thing that came to you that you did on your own?
I've always been drawing, and I got really into sculpting for a while when I was in middle school, I'd say. But I mean, drawing has always been a part of it. When I got very seriously into painting, I probably started when I was about like 16 or so. Uh, like I moved out of my parents' house very early, and I was staying in a friend's trailer by the beach. And yeah, I just had this space where I could be very messy with flinging paint around, and I had so much more space for canvases. Freedom of expression with splatter paint, not being worried about getting things messy at all. And yeah, I'd say like I've always been drawing. Sculpture I haven't done in a while. It's been more mainly focused on, painting and drawing for the moment. But sculpture is something I would love to get back into.
Sculpting is, I mean, sculpting is that's a fascinating discipline all in itself. What what materials do you sculpt with? Are you stone? Are you clay?
It
You know,
was
ceramic?
clay for a while. It was Sculpey, I think is the brand that it was, and it was using just like the same clay. I'm forgetting the name of it. It's used in like sculpting bases and everything, but just about anything. For a while, a piece that I'm still working on is this bust of a head, which is like a mannequin's head, that I'm gluing to make a kind of mosaic pattern of all these wine bottles, like all across the head. So it's, matching the contours and everything. And those are just shattered wine bottles that I'm applying so that they can fit in all the grooves and spaces. But yeah, it was clay for the most part.
So you still working on? You still got some pieces you're working on. What do you like? What's the big difference with you between working with sculpting and draw and paint and pen?
I would say that, I mean, the main difference would be materials are cheaper. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You can work with more kind of like outlandish concepts within drawing and painting with fewer materials than you can with sculpting. I'd say, and also like on a larger format. It again, like I would say, it comes down to material use, and that you would. I mean, there's a compression of space for sure. I mean, because sculpting is such a three-dimensional thing, where as artwork, I could have this whole room full of paintings and probably stack up like thousands of pieces on top of each other. When it comes to sculpting, there's such a finite amount of space that you have to actually hold these pieces of art that you're making. I mean, I do the tactile sensation in sculpting is something that is a huge pull for me, though. Like that's very enjoyable. But there are other tactile sensations within painting as well.
Sure.
It's just that it's so much more, what I would say like visceral or like hands-on, where it's not like I'm finger painting usually. I'm using like brushes and such. So, but with sculpting, I mean, you'll be using tools and everything, but it's far more, you're getting your hands a lot dirtier.
Now you said it's something you don't do full time, but that's something do you work based on? I mean, because the obvious thing for any artist is to get their pieces shown, get their art shown. Now, is it easier for you to to get shows as a visual artist or as a sculptor?
I actually haven't had in mind to do a large. What do you want to come over here? In terms of sculpture, I mean, I feel like the fastest route I've had in my mind for getting a large body of work out there, and so I feel like sculpting is something that will come, as time goes on, as more of my work gets out there, as I can make this a full-time thing. It's mostly, even for the last show that I had some work in, I only had like 3 pieces that were of a larger format. They were like these paintings, but I don't know. I think I've just been so obsessed with the idea of getting, this last notebook of mine like flushed out, and the rest of the canvases in the garage, which was probably like 10 to 15 canvases, all with work that is either, they're either fresh canvases or work that I've started. I'm kind of working on a few at the same time, but just getting that all together so I can really feel that I have the body of work that I need to, start having solo shows or start submitting to galleries or even just finding an art dealer, you know?
Yeah. As far as that goes, I mean, is it, what was the first time you actually showed your art to your public? I mean, outside your closest friends and family. How old were you when the first time you exhibited your work?
I was 18, I believe, and or was it 18? I'm gonna say 18. And it was at the Chocolate Art Show, actually. So it was kind of a trip to be back for this last one last month, or I guess this month. No, last month. And yeah, I mean, to be completely frank, I haven't shown at that many, places or locations.
But I think that's going to change, right? That pretty much is up to you on
Yeah.
that, right? On what you want, if you want to show or not. And what do you? Because I've talked to a few artists who sit there and they'll hear about an upcoming show or whatnot, and then they'll go to their works, and then they feel like they lose sort of confidence. How important is self-confidence to an artist, a visual artist?
It's
Is it
actually
everything? Is it everything, or is it just part of the puzzle?
no, that's actually really great that you brought that up because I think that's something as well. I'm sorry, buddy. Come here. Um, that is something where you know getting the rest of this body of work done will just, I think, instill in me a very rigid structure of belief of like, no, you're very serious about this. You're not just like fucking around or anything. You took all this time and devotion to put this all together, and that will instill the confidence. I think it is important to have confidence in whatever regard because it can take somebody who you know maybe like objectively as like history goes on, people say like, oh, well, his artwork isn't as well received as some unknown artist that died, and then their artwork comes out. But yeah, you have to. There's a certain level of strength within producing anything, but then showing it as well, where you have to you have to be your own salesman.
Yeah, that is true, isn't it? You really do gotta, you gotta believe. I mean, it comes out in your work too. I think a lot of that comes out. You see that in the masters. You look at some of their paintings, and you just see the power coming out of it. And I feel the same way in today's art. You look at certain pieces, and you just can feel the energy that was put into creating it. And I think that's one of the reasons why painters are, I think some of them there's a thin line between arrogance and self-confident, of course.
Oh
you
yeah,
know
no, of course.
I'm sure you've seen both sides of the coin with that, when you're
Most
dealing
definitely.
with artists. um
That's actually something where I think that will kind of snip the cord of any feelings of like self-doubt or arrogance is just going about this process of you know getting this such a solid body of work that it only has to come from my personal feeling of how solid it is because I've been I have a bunch of pieces already completed, but there's something where I'm like, oh, I can have confidence in myself as an artist more, knowing that it was my own goal that I made for myself, and I'm coming to the table with some actual like scratch in my pocket. Like I'm not just showing up with a single piece of art where I'm coming with a solid body of work that really is going to examine like, okay, what is he going to bring to the arts, to this industry.
um what was the piece that the first piece that you sold? What was that like when the first time you actually sold one of your paintings? Was it excitement? Was it melancholy? What was your emotion about that?
I would say, yeah, it was being excited, but I think the first thought that came to mind is, okay, this is great. You're making some money from it. Somebody has your artwork. That's wonderful. Uh, but also, you need to put something very solid together because with what I was paid for it, just in general, it's great to be paid for work. But I'm like, for the scale on what I want to accomplish artistically, I'm going to have to bring in something more than just enough to keep the lights on and get some paint together. Like I feel like, I love pop art, I love contemporary art, but more than anything, I'm like, well, I need to have, some value to my name, and where it's not just like, oh, pieces that you can just buy in like Santa Monica, which there are some great artists in, Santa Monica, Venice, or the, any number of galleries around LA. But I've always been more interested in like the ultimate idea of envisioning it, like, what it would be like, the fine artists like Jeff Koons or Damien Hirst, or it's Albert Dali used to do a thing where if he was out to dinner or something and they would bring the check over, instead of just paying for the bill like normal, he would draw something on it instead, knowing like, oh, you're not going to submit this at all, they're not going to bring this receipt in. The drawing is far more worth than the cost of this meal.
Oh, so did he pay? He was paying for his meal with his art, or
At least one that I just remember, like, yeah, this little note from the fact of, yeah, either one of his friends or him saying himself that, yeah, he would just draw something on the receipt that they handed over. And then at that point, it was like, I believe he was very well respected and well known. That's the only way that makes sense.
Are you self-taught, or did you end up going to art school? And how? And if you did or didn't, but I still like to hear your opinion about this. How important is art school? Is it overblown, or is it critical?
Well, personally, yeah, I didn't go to like a college for art or anything. I had some art classes in high school, but not like every year or anything. It was some classes just here and there. But in general, I mean, that depends on what you're going for. I wouldn't say it's like black or white of like, oh, it's good for this, but it's bad for that. I mean, there's like a multitude of reasons why. If you want, your step by step, like, technical processes from certain teachers, then of course, uh, if I mean, it just depends on like what you're aiming for artistically. I mean, there's so many great artists that never had any formal teaching, but I would say it depends on what kind of process you want to go about. Are you somebody that wants to go the route of having something that's very set and routine of going to school, taking these classes, learning so many fundamentals, and certain aspects of what teachers are wanting to have taught and everything? Or do you want to, it could be that you want to find something new. You want to be more like free form. You want to be more exploratory, not had deadlines and assignments that you don't feel will, help you as much as just going off on your own. But I'd say in either scope, it's just, is your pursuit to, make like, more commercial artwork, or, if you're designing clothes or such. I don't know. I suppose all I'm trying to say is that I think either or is great as long as you stay committed to, making things the world has yet to see.
I was gonna say, I mean, that's got to be, you have a commercial artist who works in graphic design or whatnot, and they're there, they're there making art via the computer, which that's open to interpretation, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I look at some of the, the video games and whatnot, and they look great, and you sit there and go like, wow, that must have been really talented to get, to make that. I'm not really so sure, to my own personal opinion, when I see it, like computer generated art, if it's, to me, it's like, I don't know why, but I think it's a cheat, because you have help. I think someone who's doing it freestyle by hand or by brush, I'm much more respectful of that. I'm much more, to me, it's like it takes a lot more work and a lot more vision. I think that, I think it's a much more narrower band for a graphic artist or, a commercial artist. I mean, they have a lot of helps to help them, to do what they need to do. Um, but have you ever felt the pressure to sit there and like on a deadline to draw? I mean, you and I talked earlier about sometimes you don't have anything in the tank, but has there been a time where you felt like or like you do commissions and people can write to you and they can ask you to create a piece of art? Do you ever feel like when you get that, like, okay, I got 3 months to do this, and then you're in the last month, and all of a sudden you still haven't done it because you still haven't felt anything, but all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm supposed to have this done by this point in time. Do you ever feel the pressure to sit and create? And does that work for you in your process, or do you have to be comfortable in order to work?
Mm, yeah, I mean, I'd say, yeah, trying to force anything isn't really going to work that well. I,
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, there is like a comfort element that has to be in it, but sometimes for the most part now, I think I feel more than ever. It's just the fact of that I know it's like something that I need to do. And when I have had people commission stuff, it was still just a feeling of, okay, this is something that I need to do. I think most of all, I think that for like myself, I don't think I've had a commission or a situation, with producing something or showing a piece of work where the deadline is coming down, where I don't eventually end up, finding the thought of, well, this is something that you still want to do. Sure, this is either an idea that they want made, or, if it was a class assignment or something, it like more than anything, I think I would feel, a lot more pessimistic or like horrible if it was nonstop. Like, this is the only way that you are going to make art and make any money from it is by just making exact, ideas that other people want. No, I don't know. Like, I suppose that's why I've gone about, you know, not going to art school and just really trying to go my own way with my own vision of how I want to become an artist. Because I'm like, well, I I want people to like and purchase the work as like a secondary thing. Uh, I mean, which is still very important because it holds up on its own. It's actually touching something where it's what they didn't ask for, but it's what they really wanted. It's what they like needed more than anything to see. Something that you wouldn't have thought of in the first place that really resonates. I think is something I try to strive for.
Now, when you do a commission art a piece, um, what's the process into doing that? Is that just if I came up to you and said, "Listen, I admire your talent and I think that you're on your way up, and so I want to commission you to make a piece." Uh, Now, do they tell you what they want, or they just say whatever you want to do? The combination of both. How does a privately commissioned piece differ from one that's already hanging in the gallery?
from the little experience that I've had, I would say that, yeah, I'll ask if there's something that they have in mind that they want. Sometimes it'll just be like I had one person that only wanted like black and white, just something that was hyper like textured and everything. Um, but I'd say, where it changes is the fact that it's not just, something just coming like purely from my mind. It's influenced by, a concept or idea that they want. It could just be the coloring of it. It limits it a little bit in some ways because, if somebody asks you to draw a dog or something, there could be a million there could be an infinite amount of ways that you could draw that dog, stylistically, color wise. You do it like cubist, you do it super minimalist, you do it like hyper real or whatever. But the point is, it's all going to be centered around while you're drawing a dog. It could be you writing the word dog over and over again on paper. But then again, it's the thing of like, oh, well, I'm not thinking about like drawing a cat. I'm thinking about, oh, how does this work around the idea of a dog? Whereas otherwise, if it's something that somebody's just, looking at as a piece of my art and they're like, oh, I want to buy that. But it didn't really have anything to do with them at all. It's just something that they saw and they liked. Whereas, if somebody's commissioning something, it does have something to do with them. If they're asking, in a way, if they're just asking for, if they want to see some new pieces, and that's a completely other thing. But for the most part, I'd say it can narrow things down.
Now, what would happen if, let's just say, I went and saw one of your pieces at a gallery, and I saw it, and let's say they're asking, $2K for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're saying. And I'm going like, well, I don't have $2K, but what I'll do is I'll contact you and say, yeah, I saw this piece over at at XYZ gallery. Can you give me can you draw something along that similar line? I mean, like, do they call? I mean, how do you set a price for a commission piece? Is it based on the materials that you're, is it like a regular contract job, almost like, okay, well, it's going to take me approximately, it's going to take me approximately 10 hours to draw. I'm going to need to use, this much materials, I mean, and whatnot. And so, they're trying to basically, instead of paying $2K, they want to pay maybe $1,000K, but for the same picture in the general sense. Is that something that you would do, or would you recognize that as what they're trying to do? And would you charge appropriately? Would you sit there and say, that's a lot like what the piece I'm already drew at the gallery, and if I go ahead and I undercut my own self, it's not a good idea. So I can't give you that piece for that kind of price. Is that something? Have you run across something like that? Is that something that happens in the art world with especially investors? Because I know a lot of times art investors will come by, they'll see a young talent, and they invest in their early work in the hopes that they'll become, more well known. How do you handle something like that? Do you go ahead and go with an art investor? I mean, do you work with them, or is it something you sit there and say, my work is my work is this price, and that's where it's going to stay? Basically, how do you protect your own value in the art world?
Well, I mean, I can say, very honestly, I don't even think I'm at that point yet. I think that, hopefully.
You're close. You're close.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, because I mean, the moment that the body of work comes together at that point is the moment where so everything is out of the studio of me becoming an artist. So far, it's been so much about what's happening in the studio. I mean, I could post more on my Instagram and do more work like that for sure, but I would say that I've really loved the idea of coming on to the scene or coming into a name with a lot of substance behind me, something that you can really already dive very deeply into. In terms of, pricings and such, I would say that, of course, it will probably start, like any artist, it starts lower, and then you get, name recognition, and then there's value to the name, and, who buys the work is something that really ties into it of, elevating prices and everything. But I don't know. I would think it'd be very funny if somebody were ever to come in and be like, could you draw or paint a smaller version of this larger painting that I want? And we'll get that price for it. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's going to be priced according to, yeah, of course, time and materials, but also
yeah. Or even worse. I mean, what I mean, it's I
or
guess
just buy a print,
I mean, has anybody ever come up to you and asked you to commission you to draw another artist's work? Maybe there's a big piece out like a Coons out there, and they come out there and say, "Well, I know you can't duplicate it, but can you give me something that looks generally in the neighborhood? Can you copy that person, that art style? Even though it's not, I don't want you to do a forgery. Oh no, I don't want that. But maybe instead of using purple, maybe use green or something like that. If they want the same person's painting, but they want it their own, they want to make it just unique enough to call their own. Is that something that's frowned upon? I mean, you never is it just like self ethics? Is it just in the art world itself? It's like they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Is that something that's never talked about or ever touched about when you do your art?
Well, I mean, there's lots of artists that have based their works on other artists, but in terms of thinking of somebody, there have been great art forgers as well. But I mean, in thinking about if somebody wanted me to make something that was just going to be, another person's painting, but, change up the colors or take, a certain subject matter out of it or something, I'd be like, I don't know. They have like Photoshop for that.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
I feel like you can do this if you really want that. I mean, if you want a painting and everything, like I do something that there's plenty of artists that are mentioned in my work, that I mentioned by name. Seriously, dude, leave him alone. Oh, I just locked on his head. So horrible. But I would say, yeah, I mean, I would find that I find it very funny. I find it very ridiculous. I'd be like, I don't know, like, I don't think it would be something where I would like jump at the opportunity.
Right.
But yeah, I'd still go down to like, let's say they wanted like a Jean-Michel Basquiat painting, but they wanted it without, one of, the figures or some of the words he had in it. I'd be like, again, you just Photoshop this. This isn't really my thing.
Right.
Maybe it could be fun, but if you're thinking about it in terms of like, mixing up elements of, want a very iconic. I mean, plenty of people have done this. So you take like Van Gogh's Starry Night, but then you paint into it like the Scream or something.
Right. Okay.
Like that's something that's more interesting. But I feel like if it's like, oh, I want Starry Night without, I want it to be like the middle of the day, even that's more interesting. I don't know. It all depends. If it was something as simple as like, I don't know, it can all be interesting, but for the most part, I feel like I want to make things that are completely new as they can be. Something that's a little bit more like personal, less just thinking about like, what if you had like Van Gogh's cafe scene, but instead it was, in the morning, which.
Well, that's interesting. I never thought about that. I mean, you could, I mean, I guess you could take some of the masters and put your own spin to it, but I'm just wondering if is that considered okay to do, or only if it's done for a private commission, you know, you
Yeah,
wouldn't do.
from what I've like read about that concept is like some people will frown down on it. Like Damien Hirst had a lot of pieces that were based off of Francis Bacon, like these large sculptural pieces and everything. And some people was like, that's stealing or such. But there's a whole book. It's like great artists steal, and there is something to the facts of like, you know, everything is going to be influenced or inspired from something else, even if it's as personal as it can be. But you may still have like these thoughts of other works or things that you've seen or people that you met like running in the back of your head. But I don't know. I suppose a little bit I aim for like that could be something fun to do as just like I don't know, just like experimenting with different like styles of painting or like the great masters. But I think what I'm focused on a little bit is, or not just a little bit, but like a fundamental aspect of like, I want works where it's like, it can really radicalize like the way that, art can be viewed with the world itself. And, the feelings that are yet to be like shown within visual art, experiences, thoughts.
I know that's a really difficult question I asked. But it's just like I was just curious how that
Well,
works.
the difficult ones are the best for sure. But I mean, it depends on like which critic you ask, I guess, or who you're
Okay,
asking.
you know what? You just said a magical word there. Let's talk about that because
Critic?
oh hell yes. Let's get into that, Griffin, because
Yeah, totally.
and I tell you what, I truly am lost at what defines an art critic because I think that art is the most subjective of all the arts. That it's like it nobody's going to look at the same painting the same way.
True.
I truly don't understand how there's art critics and why, even less why they have influence. It's like, how do you deign that your point of view is any more valid than anybody else's? What, because you got printed in a magazine? It's like, I wow, our critics are probably the one critics more than anything else that I just like shake my head out and go like, what the hell is an art critic?
Yeah, I mean, it is I suppose, I mean, thinking about it as like logically as I can, it's like the thought of like, oh, well, if you say that an artist is great and then they end up, becoming very prolific and well known, and you have that with a certain number of artists that you're critiquing, then that makes you a reputable critic. Like, I mean, yeah, I feel like that kind of makes sense and everything, but it is something where it's like, well, you can give like scathing reviews. I mean, it's been the case for so many artists where people will hate the work forever or it's underappreciated, and then later on it's like, oh, how could anybody, just like view it in this light? But it's a little bit of a ridiculous thing. But then at the same time, it's like, if you have somebody that is saying time and time again, artists that then are just coming up on the scene and then they get really well known, that, oh, this guy really has it. And then they do, and you have that over and over and over again. You would lean towards like, okay, that's a good critic. But art, yeah, it is so subjective. And, it's like anything, like certain, like styles or, things will come up in fashion and everything, and then they'll go out of fashion. But I don't know. Critiquing art is one of those like things where, I mean, it's like, how are you critiquing it as well? Are you thinking about it just as like style, your own emotions that you feel from it?
Because I could take anybody in the chat. I'll take my friend Fluff here. her and I could walk inside there, stand side by side, look at one of your paintings, and come up with two different views of it. Now that's how it is. Whereas like someone's like a movie or a book or anything else, that more likely will come up there, watch it, and pretty much come up with the same point of view. Read the book, come up with the same point of view. Look at fashion, come up with the same point of view. That's always, it's more common than not for that. But when it comes down to art, holy crow, it's like it's so different. It's just way
It's so
different.
subjective.
Yes, more than anything else.
Yeah.
My wife and I used to go to galleries and museums, and we would see the same paintings. Like I was, we're both very much on the classical side. I didn't really learn to really appreciate modern art till later in life, but I would see some of the modern art at the museums, and I'd be honest with you, I'd be shaking my head like, I truly don't understand that. I don't when they show they show a painting with 4 or 5 dashes of color on it, and people are going like, oh, that's the latest thing. And it's like, that's like finger painting. I could put that in front of any 5-year-old and get the same thing. I don't understand why that piece is all of a sudden like, oh, he's so deep. It's like deep. Okay. You get lost. You get totally perplexed by that.
I mean, that always will be a funny thing. There's always like the phenomenon, which I think is good to hold in mind with art, where it's like, oh, well, like you could have done it, but you did not make that piece. But when it comes down to it, I mean, there are paintings that will just stand up on their own, but I think all like a key element of visual art is that it gets very, very deeply into, like, for instance, like you watch a movie and everything, you're really just seeing like a character up there. Sure, people can get interested in like, the celebrity of the person, their real life and everything and all this stuff. But I feel like when it comes down to art, it's far more about, the life of this artist, the struggles that they went through, the art at that time and why they made this thing. There's so much more like tied in to like the reality of this person and what they've gone through to get to this point of making this thing in this time when it was made, if they actually made it onto the scene, if they made it as a well-known and paid artist. Take out even the well-known part, just an artist that lived off of his work and lived well, and the history of the time period that they were going through. But also it's, I mean, art is a reaction to the art that is around it. So for instance, if in that circumstance of thinking about like, oh yeah, you look at a painting and let's say it's like super, super simplistic. It's just like 2 dashes on a canvas, and just like a raw canvas. There's not even like, a layer of white paint, just kind of like solidify everything together. And you just have these 2 lines. The thought could be that like, oh, well, around this time, a lot of the art that was being made, it was very like highly, hyper focused and hyper detailed and everything. And here's an artist that made this body of work that was very simplistic and naturalistic, and it was just the colors that I was using.
Yeah, because it's funny because I'm thinking you're right. I mean, it's so. I'm going to get back to that real quick, but I'm going to ask a question here. I'm going to one of our in our chat, our good friend Cal L. Daly asks you a question. He says, question, what do you feel about art being in horror movies? Like example, a Tales from the Crypt episode where Tim Roth was an artist. Yeah, that's a good question. How do you feel that artists are portrayed in on TV and movies? Are they portrayed pretty fairly? Are they over exaggerations of what an artist is, or what's your opinion?
I would say that you have like the tortured artist trope and everything, and you think about Tales of the Crypt and Tim Roth. Like, that's a good question. I think that if we're just strictly thinking of visual art here, is that, sometimes it will be this very long, tortured existence. Like you think about like at Eternity's Gate and everything. But then you think of like the movie, what is it? Is it just titled Basquiat, I believe? The point is, I think the representation is really good. It's also, I mean, within all of it, if you think about like films that are regarded in terms of like, an artist that's so hyper focused on their art form, whether you take like Black Swan or you take like Whiplash. I mean, there's so many different like sides of how it's used. Sometimes it can be, the 9 to 5 work that's being put in. I think in general, there's some good, artist representation for how they went about it and the process that it is to, follow through on your dreams, no matter like the hardships in life that are surrounding you. But I mean, a lot can be like missed from stuff. Certain points can be like hyper focused upon. But for the most part, yeah, I've always really enjoyed seeing films like, I really liked Rocketman. I love the movie Bohemian Rhapsody or Queen. But and I'm trying to think of what I mean. I've watched a lot more art documentaries on artists than actual like artists.
Yeah, I remember.
Also, I've
saw,
watched.
I saw Pollock with Ed Harris.
I need to see that.
Yeah, that seemed to be among the tortured artists, like you said, or tortured artist trope. There's a really good horror movie called The Devil's Candy, which featured a painter, and that was really interesting. And of course, what was that? Velvet Buzzsaw.
Velvet Buzzsaw was wonderful. I mean, even if you think about Donnie Darko, there's a huge element that's all revealed at the end, where like Frank and the dude who he actually was an artist and everything. I think that, something that, and if you take like horror movie concepts and everything, a lot of like the idea of an artist does revolve around the fact of thinking like, oh, you have so much to express and things that are even like beyond, the mortal realm or what have you, making art for the future and such, like things unseen that then you are actually giving like an image to. And I mean, I love it. I really do. All I can say, I suppose, is that the concept that I really do enjoy is the idea of like, that art in all of its forms, but I think in Velvet Buzzsaw, this was like a huge point of it, is that then it goes beyond the realm of just, material mortal existence, and then you start to get in like the ephemeral or like the ethereal. You start to get into something that's just beyond, the physicality of what we can see around us, but something like breaching, life and death beyond the wildest means of thinking.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that too. That's another well-known horror film with a eerie painting a scene, and that was The Beyond. That was also, that was really interesting. Does anybody have any questions for our guest, Griffin Stone Katz? If you have questions, we are going to think about wrapping this up. So if you have any more questions, Griffin, this has been just an absolute joy.
Truly, Patrick. Yeah, it's been wonderful.
We talked so much about this. We didn't even talk about anything else, which is perfect. That means you have to come. That means you have to come back.
I would love to. I mean, I can talk about art for infinitely.
I'm overjoyed. This has been perfect, and I really appreciate you sharing your point of view and your feelings and your process. Like again, I do think that your star is on the rise. Your work is tremendous. Of course, I'm not a professional art critic, so what do I know, right? But I do. but I do.
At times, what do they know?
But then again, I do know beauty and I do know creativity. So that, to me, that's half the battle, right?
I would agree with that.
I know, and I definitely know talent. That's one thing I'll say. If there's one thing I do know in life, I do know when who's talented, which is It's just something I could say. I wish I could, I wish I could apply that to myself a little bit more, because I like to think I'm somewhat talented and doing something other than having a cheetah. But no, I do. I really appreciate your work and your candor. Oh, yeah, that's what the cheetah does.
I know.
He comes right behind. Yeah, he'll come in front of me. Yeah, he's orange and white.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's part cheetah, part British Shorthair.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh,
I have no idea how that happened. By the way, I have no idea. But yeah, I think it's cool. I like your cats very much.
Oh, I mean, they're the sweetest. But seriously, Patrick, yeah, it's meant a lot to have this interview and everything. It's been wonderful. Great meeting you. I would love to be back on.
Real quick, are you showing? Is there any of your pieces being shown right now? Or are you going to be doing any exhibits in the future?
No, there's nothing on the horizon right now besides just putting the work in. So yeah, I can start, showing it all together. And I'm excited to finally, I have a 40 series of, people during COVID and everything, which were just found images online. I have another, I believe, the 25 series, which is just all, pop culture figures, about 30 to 40 series of self-portraits and everything. But yeah, I mean, I'm a stickler for wanting a big bang, I guess.
I want to thank you guys out in the chat for coming out and hanging out with us. Tomorrow night we will be back at 8 p.m. sharp as we are interviewing our good friend Monty G, the horror miser. He'll be here tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Next Tuesday, we have stand-up comedian Sarah Dunn will be with us on the 6th. Our good friend Mike Ferguson will be back with us on the 7th. I think you probably met Mike.
I have, yes, indeed. Yeah, when you said his name, I was like, "Oh man, that would be great."
So yeah, Mike, he's like my brother from another mother. He's awesome, and he'll be here on next Wednesday on the 7th at 8 o'clock, and then we have the beautiful actress and model Jolene Anderson will be here, and she comes to us via way of Australia, which is where our friend Fluff is from. So thanks everybody for coming out and supporting this interview, and we will talk to you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock with Monty G. Griffin, stay right where you're at, and everybody else, thank you and have a great night.